Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the Algebra 1 concept of laws of exponents. This is standard A.11B in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 24 of the 2019 released STAAR test. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So we need to find an equivalent expression here, and there's a few different ways we can look at this. So we've got this x and then y to the negative 6. So one way to look at this would be our laws of exponents. There's a few we're going to keep up with. One would be, what happens when we get a negative exponent? Okay, so negative exponent says this. If you get a to the negative n, really, you just end up taking the reciprocal. You put it in a fraction, flip it down, and if you end up getting a negative exponent in the denominator of a fraction, you end up moving it up to the numerator. You just take the reciprocal. So when I'm seeing this, I'm thinking I've got this x, and then this y to the negative 6 is really the same as y to the 6th. So that's the exact same. X times y to the negative 6. You can leave it as that negative 6, or you can move it down into the denominator. Same thing. Now, what we need to do here, right, is we need to square both. So this is what we call the power of a power. This is also on your mathematics chart or your reference materials. So if you get a to the m power, and then you take that to the n power, right, then that's going to end up being the same as if you were to keep that base and then add the two exponents. Actually, we're going to multiply the two exponents. So we multiply those two exponents, not add. That would be product of a power, my mistake. And so we've got this situation here to where I've got this whole expression being squared, basically. So what we could do is we can kind of distribute this out. We can say, you know what, this is going to be x squared, and then we can say y to the 6th squared. Okay, so you can just, rather than the whole thing, you can just square the top and then square the bottom. Okay, it's going to end up getting you the same answer. So this is really, there's no exponent next to that x, right? So that's going to be x to the 1, right? So x to the 1 times 2, but most of us are like, yeah, that's just x squared. And you're right. If you just square x, you're going to get x squared. But really, it's if you want to keep the power of a power, there's an exponent of 1 that's kind of hidden because we don't really write that exponent since it doesn't do anything to change the base. And we have 1 times 2 makes 2. Now, when we get down here, this is going to be y to the 6 times 2. So that ends up being y to the 12. Okay, so we could say that's our answer. Okay, x squared over y to the 12. But you know what? I don't see that. So that was using this first. If we immediately move that y to the negative 6 down into the denominator. But let's see what happens if we do this. Let's use this one. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just break this up into the x, into the y to the negative 6. And I'm just going to end up squaring both of them like this. Okay? So it's going to end up being the same, right? That's going to be x squared. But now I need to do this y to the negative 6 times 2, right? The power of a power says you multiply them. So that's going to end up being, my x squared is still my x squared. It's going to be y, negative 6 times 2 makes negative 12. So this is what we see here. And we know that this easily translates into that because most of us would want to take that negative 12 and move it down and make it into the denominator as a reciprocal. But they didn't do that in this case, so we had to keep it in this other form. Our answer here is H.